And we're back. Well, we're going to get to 2 issues. Some monsters. This second half, if you want to call it second half of the episode, we're seeing all types of monsters. Some monsters. That's all I want to say. I guess some historic monsters and others man-made creatures of something out of a 1940s movie, black and white. Well, let's get to it. Green Arrow number 7, The Killing Time. Green Arrow number 7, I like this issue, and one of the reasons I liked it is because it gave us more insight in Amy, Shadow's, and Green Arrow Oliver Quinn's triangle relationship.
Yeah. It's a complicated relationship, especially with Shadow and Amy.
Yes.
Because Shadow has very different values and priorities than the other two of them. I mean, she's loyal to the Yakuza, first and foremost. Amy's trying to straddle those two worlds between her mom and Oliver.
Yes.
And that's not easy for her to do. But while she's in Tokyo, she met Oyabun at the very end of the last issue. We finally get to see him in this issue fully. And he's a dragon. He turns out to be a dragon.
Like the last dragon type. Well,
yeah. Just a straight up Chinese looking dragon.
Yes. He's very old, obviously, and he was able to form into a dragon, but Amy was talking about how her grandpa, Oyaban was talking about how her grandpa at first had lost a bunch of money for them. Mm-hmm. So he became indebted to Oyaban and the Yakuza. And because he was indebted to them, that meant his daughter was indebted to him, and their granddaughter, Amy, was indebted. And they were trying to say, well, when you sunk the Ninth Circle's, was it Inferno?
Yeah, the Inferno.
The Inferno, you also incurred us a major loss as well, and you now owe us. So Amy was saying that she could fight in the pay back by fighting in these tournaments where they said it was underground tournaments and mergers are happening there, payouts are made. Basically, there's a lot of business that goes on in these fights. But Amy Oyaban had said, well, what is their worth? I've already seen you beat someone. Who's going to bet on you? The way you fight.
Yep.
Who's going to bet on you? Well, there'll be someone to bet on me. Oyaban says, well, I have an opponent for you. And it turns out to be him. That's when he turns into the dragon and fights.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we also have a second story that's continuing from last issue with the Clock King.
Yeah, where we finally get some backstory on the Clock King after Ollie has his first spell of needing to be rewound.
Yes.
And the Clock King explains that he's William Tachman, which is one of the best names I can think of, next to Temple Fugit, the other Clock King. And he's the son of a guy who used to work at Queen Industries, who was fired by Ollie's dad? I think they mentioned that was Ollie's dad. It wasn't Ollie.
Right, yep,
And
Ollie's dad.
so he decided he would strike back at the company by essentially blackmailing Ollie, because it sounded like he didn't know that Ollie was Green Arrow. He didn't address him as Green Arrow. He just said, hey, by the time you're getting this message, you're going to need to give me some money.
Because what he say is, since his father had fired him, he inherited the company, he inherited his father's good and bad, and he inherited kind of the feud. And that's kind of the parallel with this issue is the family, the sins of the father be visited upon the son, and the daughter, and the mother. So it's kind of interweaving of, you might not have necessarily done it, but your family did it, so therefore you're going to be held responsible in my eyes.
Yep. And of course, eventually Oliver goes to the Clock King without any money and says, hey, you picked on the wrong guy. And of course, that doesn't go well for him.
No, the Clock King, that one says, I'm able to read people very well, like I knew you would be here. And I set my clocks a few seconds ahead. Boom, he gets hit with that, looked like a bullhead from the clock.
Yeah.
A grandfather clock, and he's out. In the meantime, Amy comes, and she had strapped a bomb that would go off if her heart rate went down, if her pulse went down. The Clock King says, I can tell people when they're bluffing, and you're not bluffing. They stop. Oliver was in one of those James Bond-esque where the slicer was going to slice him.
Yeah,
but
pitting the pendulum type
the
thing,
pendulum.
yeah.
And she stopped him. But it was funny as she said, the Clock King, that girl scares me. She scares me too.
Yeah.
In the meantime, when we go to the present, we see while Amy is fighting the dragon, Shadow comes back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shadow's been essentially tailing Amy through here, and she watches Amy fight Oyabun / the dragon. I guess he kind of sort of called himself the dragon, so I guess that is his name. Watches her fight him, really to not much avail. I mean, eventually it's the typical giant monster trying to bite down Amy, holding his jaws open with her scrawny little 14-year-old arms.
Right.
And finally, Shadow decides to jump in, shoots a couple arrows at him, and then blows up the building to save her daughter, which seems like that's not going to take out the dragon for that long. I mean, they said he was, 2 centuries old?
Yes.
I don't think having a building fall on him is going to kill him, but he wasn't after them, so they could have their little moment together. And it looked like they kind of repaired their bond. I mean, Shadow said she had to go kind of into hiding for a while, but Amy's free to go back to
No, she told
Ollie.
her to go back to Ollie and protect him. And she said, I will. So I like that part of their bonding. They were looking towards the future. As they talked about, Tokyo had risen from the ashes. They will as well. And I think we'll probably see maybe Shadow here in the future. I think her story is kind of wrapped up while they'll take Amy coming back to the States, looking for Oliver's Island and bringing him, finding him and starting the Green Arrow team proper. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I feel like that's going to happen is Amy's going to have a little explaining to do to Oliver, and he brings Diggle in, Black Canary, and we'll start to see him more active in the DC universe in Seattle.
Yep. It really feels like they're building his little circle. And I mean, it doesn't feel like Shadow's going to be in that for a while, might not be a regular in that universe, but she sounds like kind of on his, at least on his side. Maybe not adversarial when she comes back.
What do you feel, Green Arrow? We're 7 issues in. What's your thoughts overall on the Green Arrow rebirth?
It's good. I was happy they did a lot on Amy, because that really helps to bring me up to speed on her.
Yes.
And to really establish her with, a personality and kind of a crazy side. Like the Clock King said, hey, I know when people's bluffing and you're not bluffing, which is one of my favorite lines. It helps to differentiate her from Ollie and give her own personality too. So hopefully they find Ollie and they get him off Uncharted Island number 3. I can hear the Gilligan's Island theme coming up. I'm just picturing him crafting more bows. Everything except a boat on this island.
Green Arrow number 7 was a nice little wrap up to Amy's and Shadow's adventures in Tokyo. I'm hoping going forward that we see Amy and Oliver once he's off, as Josh said, Gilligan's Island, and the rest of the cast start to take on some more mysteries, some more adventures, and hopefully interact more with the DC universe. Green Arrow number 7. Batman number 7. Night of the Monster Men, Part 1.
Hurricane Milton is pounding down on Gotham City. Batman and his team are trying to get the residents evacuated to safer areas. And in the middle of this, Hugo Strange is launching the Monster Men at him, which the first one we see is a giant, freaky, big-headed. Looked to me a lot like a Silent Hill type thing.
Yes.
I mean, just a big, freakish thing.
We're still on the backdrop of the events of Detective Comics 940, and this is really making sure Batman is telling, we've got Nightwing in this issue, we have Batwoman, we have Clayface, we have the Spoiler, and we have Orphan, all trying to evacuate the population up to higher ground. And as you say, this is the issue where Hugo Strange, Monster Men, who we had seen in the previous Batman story arc, where they said the Monster Men are coming. This is the payoff, where at first we see the corpses in the morgue, and one of them starts to mutate, and as Hurricane Milton's coming down, pounding, all of a sudden here comes the monster just walking down the odd. It was odd.
Yeah, yeah. It is sort of the thing you would expect from a supervillain psychiatrist, I guess. I mean, sort of a deranged, the deranged mind of Hugo Strange.
I don't think he could have possibly known that a hurricane was going to come because there was no mention of hurricanes in a previous Batman or Detective Comics. So I'm just kind of thinking, all right, hurricane suddenly popped up. The Bat team is mobilized to get the citizens to safety, where they are trying to work with the police, and all of a sudden, Hugo Strange's Monster Men are going on. I think it's coincidence.
I kind of thought it was intentional. I mean, weathercasters can usually tell, when the hurricane season is going to be. Usually they can see these patterns before they move on inland. So, it's possible. It seems like this would have taken a lot of preparation.
Yes.
To put into place. Maybe he was expecting something else to happen, but
Right.
It seems like if there is an evacuation taking place, that would be a soft target.
Right.
And that's where Hugo Strange would want to hit. Especially if, whether that's just to kill the citizens of Gotham or just to break Batman's spirit. To me, it felt a lot like the No Man's Land story arc, which was sort of the reverse, where you had the villains doing stuff and then the earthquake. In this, you've got the natural disaster and then the villains coming after that. That was just my thought, but who knows? We might not find out till later. We might never even find out.
That's true.
If it was coincidence or not.
What did you think about Batman, how he views, even though we've got universal-style monsters that are going down that you would see on a sci-fi movies of the 40s, he wasn't really disturbed by it. He wasn't out of place. He's still Batman. You like the way he viewed this.
Yeah, it was cool because when he first sees this thing, he's the only one who's not freaked out.
Right.
He's talking to Alfred. Alfred's kind of saying, "Excuse me, sir, are you seeing what I'm seeing?"
Right.
And he reads the body language. He's looking. It's moving in sort of an infantile fashion. He knows it doesn't have that much of an intellect. He's looking at how flammable is the skin, how thick is the skin, and he's relying on Alfred for a lot of that. And it's this, and also Batwoman says to him, "You're not used to fighting monsters." And Batman says, "I've been fighting monsters all my life."
Right.
And it makes him seem so hardened. He's so experienced.
I think he was looking at it logically and looking at the problem scientifically and breaking it down to the elements. That's what I enjoy about Batman. Some people might thought that the storyline was out of place because of what we've been dealing with Detective and Batman. It was an interesting twist where I've been fighting monsters my whole life. Everything's scientific. I'll take care of the monsters. We'll split the team up, get the citizens of Gotham to safety. And he really relies on Clayface to blend in with the cops because Jim Gordon at the beginning of the issue said, "You're still vigilantes. We can't be seen working with vigilantes."
Yeah.
In which they reply, "Well, it's for the good of Gotham." And then Clayface is starting to look like cops, and he's splitting himself off to multiple, which I thought was a pretty cool power.
Yeah, that was impressive. That's because he even says, I kind of have a range as far as I can separate myself.
Yes.
I'm not gonna, not gonna be able to maintain that for a while. And that was really pretty cool. That makes Clayface really, much more than just a physical force. Makes him a really useful force too.
What did you feel was the scariest part of the this issue, because Night of the Monster Men, big crazy monsters, childlike monsters, spider-looking monsters at the end, or Hugo Strange naked pumping weights in some basement-style lair.
Definitely the third one. I mean, we see Hugo pretty early in this issue.
Yes.
We see, one panel where he's lifting up.
Yes.
One panel he's lifting down, pans out just a little bit more. One more panel where he drops it, and you see he's butt naked.
Yes.
Like, okay. Like, that's just kind of out there. I mean, I get it. For the last kind of few years, they've been trying to make Hugo Strange a physical threat too.
Right.
Which, I mean, I guess I like to think of him as more of a mental villain. I mean, like the Riddler or something. But I mean, it looks like he's gearing up for a physical confrontation with Batman.
Which is odd, I felt.
Yeah. There have been previous issues where he's a pretty competent martial artist. Like he's just sort of copied Batman at everything he's doing. And it's weird to see him do like a diving kick onto somebody, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he's definitely not expecting the Monster Men to do all the work for him. It sounds like.
And I wonder what the purpose for the Monster Men to be there in the first place. Batman number 7 is part of a story arc, so we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss part 2 of the Monster Men with Nightwing.